Thanks, everybody. First off, I want to say thank you to the organizers and the volunteers. I think this has been a really fun get-together. And I know I say this to everybody, but I'm really excited about the fact that in-person events are back. It's fun. It's nice to actually get out and meet people in the community. Second, and this is really more for when I was following up Brooke, but wow, what a lead-in. Thank you, Brooke, for that keynote. It's going to be a tough act to follow. Real quick, my name is Alex Gottemoller. I run a boutique AWS partner out of Chicago called West Loop Strategy. We've got some other folks here at our table up here. I'm not here to talk about the future. I'm not here to talk about AI today. Hopefully, I'll just give you guys a little bit of entertainment. I'm here to show how you can use AWS to build your own Moviephone. And Brooke mentioned something earlier, right? Like sometimes a really nice way to try out and get to use all these technologies and all these awesome things that AWS has is to just try to build something wacky. I would say this is a weird, hopefully wacky, kind of fun exercise with AWS technology. So, for some of you that may remember the 90s, may remember Moviephone, some of you may not. The first question is, what is Moviephone? Well, back in the 90s, you could, anywhere in the country, call 777-film, and you notice there's no area code, because that's how long ago this was. You didn't even have to type in your area code. And you could get movie showtimes for whatever movie you wanted to see at whatever theater in the country was near you. You may also remember it from a classic Seinfeld episode, where Kramer gets a new phone number that's only one digit away from Moviephone, and hilarity ensues. So rather than, for those of you that don't know exactly, and I guess we'll see if we can see it or not, what Moviephone is, we'll just let Kramer explain it.
How is this? George, Elaine and I went to see Channel with Jerry. With Jerry. Great. Probably went to the 84th Street. That's where I always go with Jerry.
Hello, and welcome to Moviephone. If you know the name of the movie you'd like to see, press 1.
Come on.
Using your touch-tone keypad, please enter the first 3 letters of the movie title now. You've selected Agent Zero. If that's correct, press 1.
What?
You've selected Brown-Eyed Girl. If this is correct, press 1. Why don't you just tell me the name of the movie you selected?
Channel?
To find the theater nearest you, please enter your 5-digit zip code now. Why don't you just tell me where you want to see the movie?
Lowe's Paragon, 84th and Broadway?
Channel is playing at the Paragon 84th Street Cinema in the main theater at 9:30 p.m.
Yeah, now I got you.
It's also playing in theater number 2.
All right, so let's talk about what we saw there. I think everyone is pretty familiar with, having to wait on hold, having to do miserable call center stuff. But why is this so funny? Why is it interesting? Why do we want to do it here? This is what the flow looks like, and you'll notice it's just straight up ignoring anything that the user's doing, right? So this is what we're going to try to recreate here. We're not going to, we're going to recreate Moviephone. It's going to have this functionality, but we're not going to do it like a full-blown service. We're going to recreate that exact flow that we just saw. So what do we need in order to actually do that? Well, we need a phone number. We need, some sort of interactive call tree. We need some voice recognition. We're going to need a data source for those movies and the show times themselves. And we're going to need some way to look up that data. And then, most importantly, we're going to need the audio of Kramer answering the phone. So if you take a look at this though, really when you bucket these things out, you'll notice, well, if you're not familiar with it, Amazon Connect, that handles number 1, 2, and 3. It's a great product. We'll go into it in a minute, but then we look at, how are we going to look up the data? Well, that sounds like a Lambda. It sounds like we could use a Lambda function to do that. So we'll get back to 4 and 6 a little bit later, but the first thing we'll do is we'll talk about, what is Connect, how it works, how to set it up, and go from there. So at its basic, Amazon Connect is a call center. Everyone from Amazon is going to tell you that it's not called a call center anymore. It's called a contact center. It's fine, whatever. They can call it whatever they want, but everybody knows what it is. It's a great product. It has all of the features you would need, and I say this shamelessly because we're Connect partners, but it has every feature you would need to set up an actual, fully functional, super, either really well set up or really poorly set up, as you can see, contact center, right? So all the advanced features like looking up flights, looking up, information from other sources, call management, agent management. They've done a lot of work on the agent management side the last couple of years to make managing a call center a little bit easier. And then I'm not going to talk about it, but right after this at 1:45, Joe is talking about at 1:45 a ton of AI and generative AI features for Connect. So tune into that one if you're interested. So today we're going to show how to, do the basics. Claim a phone number, set up a call flow. Call flow is what they call that interactive call tree. Use Lex bots for voice prompting, and then how to integrate with Lambda to do other custom functionality and other fun things. Before we jump into this, actually here we go. Okay, these are coming through, good. How to claim a phone number. Pretty basic. Most of you guys are familiar with the AWS console. It works really well. If you are setting this up from scratch, this Connect is one of those products that is geared a little bit towards business-friendly folks as opposed to purely DevOps stuff. That said, all of this stuff can be done with all your usual DevOps and infrastructure as code. But it's a lot easier to kind of show off, hey, here's how you go claim a phone number. You could transfer in a phone number if you have an existing one from another provider. Or as you can see here, you can register either 800 numbers or just a regular old phone number that is not toll-free. The difference is toll-free numbers, 800 numbers are 6 cents per day to have managed by Amazon, and regular numbers are 3 cents per day. So huge, huge savings, I know. And before you ask, no, I already looked into it, but 900 numbers are not a thing anymore. So now that we have our phone number, we're gonna create a call flow. So the call flow is what we're gonna use to assign to that number. So when somebody calls in from that number, they're gonna get sent directly to this flow, and this flow is gonna define what happens to the call, right? You see there's a lot going on here, but it's actually really straightforward, right? It's basically a GUI drag and drop interface that has consists of these blocks with different functionality and this configuration pane that pops up when you want to actually set something up. The nice thing is it is both exportable and importable as just a nice, pretty clean JSON file, and it works pretty well if you're moving from, if you want to do your typical dev test prod types of environments and control all this stuff with CI/CD, it works really well too. So let's see. A little bit more about call flow and the features. It has this huge library of blocks that I'm scrolling through probably a little too fast, but it allows you to do a lot of really fun and kind of cool stuff. I say fun, I think this is fun. Maybe it's because I grew up with like prank phone calls or something that I just immediately start thinking of all the ways we can do to annoy people, all the call center hell you could put someone through. But it's fun. I think it allows you to be creative and interactive in a way that, some of the AWS services don't have a face. So this is a fun one. Most of the stuff is about controlling the flow, setting attributes. If a caller is calling about this or they're calling about that, where do we send them? Do we get them to the right agent? Do we get into a queue? Do we look up their flight status or something like that? Look up a movie time. But then the nice thing is, if there's something missing, if you can't do something with Connect, there is a Lambda block, and you can pretty much do anything from there. Which is actually exactly how we're going to show you how to look up and handle those movie times and stuff a little bit further down. So the next feature to talk about, really briefly before we get into the rest of the configuration is LexBot. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody tell me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure they just call them this because of Alexa, and that's how they, came up with it. It's the same sort of intent, utterances, and like sort of slot functionality that you get to use if you're setting up something within Alexa. How do they work? What are the major features? Really, there's three parts. There's an intent. An intent is an action that you want the end user to be able to do with a voice or with their voice. It's something you want to be able to accomplish, right? That can be as simple as we want to capture a piece of information from a user. In that case, going back to the Kramer example, we're talking about, he asks for the movie and then he saves that piece of information. That is one use case for an intent, right? So an intent can be, hey, prompt someone, record whatever they say, and store that in a slot, like the name of the movie or your order number or something like that. Utterances are in between. Utterances are, you don't have to map them out, but it's best practice to give a few. Really, it's samples that, maybe there might be a couple different ways to say the same thing, right? Like, where's my flight, or what is my flight status, or is my flight on time? All of those things might lead you to the same intent, which is get the flight status. And that's how they sort of fit together. So creating a LexBot, again, pretty basic. Click Create Bot. It's in a separate place right next to the flows because you can reuse these throughout different flows, different modules, things like that. Pretty basic, right? Just give it a name. Really, when you get into configuration is where it can get super complicated, right? So taking a look here, this is a really basic configuration. This is what we were talking about before. This is probably poorly named. We called it lookup movies, but really we're saving the movie from the user's voice. This is strictly saying, hey, we're storing a movie title that's free-form input into this slot called movie title. And either, there's intent and there's a couple of sample utterances like final destination. Let's see. Here is, actually that, next one, okay. Here is, once you've set up an intent, or once you've set up a bot, this is how you go configure it within that call flow. So you've got this step. This step says, get theater. This is going to be our second one. This is, in this particular case, we're going to, in this step, receive the movie title from the previous step. We're going to integrate with this bot, and specifically this intent that says look up theaters. And here we're configuring, yes, that's the intent that we're going to use. The specific, alias, that alias is, I'll show you in a second what that is, and specifically the audio prompt that we're going to play. And that audio prompt can be text to speech, or in our case, we're going to use audio directly from Kramer. Let's see. Okay, so how does this integrate with Lambda, right? The reason I'm including this particular slide is if you end up working with this, and Henry over there can, knows what I'm talking about, it's like hilariously difficult to find how to integrate one of these Lex prompts with Lambda, or even these other places. There's 3 or 4 different places when you're configuring the bot, when you're configuring the intent and all of the features, where there's a checkbox that says use Lambda. And that's it. It's just a checkbox that says use Lambda. As far as I can tell, you can't get to the part where you configure what Lambda from that interface within Connect. You actually have to go back out, and you'll notice this is in the Amazon Lex page, and you'll see this, you have to have deployed the thing. You have to click on the language that you're using, and only then does that allow you to pick a Lambda to associate with this bot. It's goofy, I don't know why, but I included that in there in case it saves somebody like 2-3 hours of time some point in the future. Now that we know kind of what we're gonna do, right? We're gonna have these 2 bots, these 2 intents within the same bot. The one intent is gonna get the movie name and store it. The next intent is going to take that movie name, it's gonna take the theater name, it's gonna store that, and it's gonna pass them both to a Lambda. We'll get to what that Lambda actually does in a second, but for now we're gonna revisit where are we going to get this data. We haven't really talked about, somewhere out there, someone's got a, data set of all these up-to-date movies and times and things like that. Yes, someone has done this before. There's plenty of services. You guys might remember these puppets, these Fandango puppets from like 15 years ago. Moviephone is actually back as of 3 weeks ago. I was kind of horrified. I already submitted this talk, and then Moviephone relaunched like 3 weeks ago. But they did not relaunch as a phone, so this is still relevant. They just are an app now. And Moviephone doesn't have a publicly available API or anything like that. So we found Fandango. Fandango has exactly what we're looking for. We thought, okay, maybe there's something on their website, maybe there's an API, right? So this is where we get into some of the fun stuff. This is where we get into, we're quote unquote reverse engineering, which is AKA opening up the network tab and looking at all the network calls that are happening on the website. In this particular case, it's fantastic. It's a, a client-side JavaScript framework they're using. I didn't even bother to look into which one, but we can see that there is a, and we're sitting here looking at one of the theaters in Chicago, Regal Webster. There is an API that goes, hey, show me all the movies playing at this theater. And it comes back with all the times for all the next couple of days. So it's perfect. It's exactly what we're looking for. So how do we go from there to getting that into a Lambda? What I showed you right there, super lazy, but it works. You'll notice I'm right-clicking, I'm clicking copy as curl. We're just copying this network call as it was made in the browser as a curl format. And then we're just gonna go lazily paste it over here into Postman. And then that gives us all the necessary interface to come in here and start playing around with figuring out what this, how does the API work? This is really helpful as a workflow. If you're trying to understand an API that you don't own, or that maybe you're not supposed to access or you don't have the rights to, like this, this is a super quick and dirty way to figure out how does this API work? What are the parameters that I need? You'll find in here pretty quickly if there's some sort of client-side authentication or anti-bot tool in there, we'd find it really quickly. In this case, luckily for us today, does not exist on Fandango. So here we are. You'll notice there's one more piece too. When I come up here to the top right, they also have this nice little feature in Postman where they just translate that request into whatever language you need, right? There's like 15, 20 languages in there. In this case, we're gonna use Python with our Lambda, and that's gonna give you the request, the code to make that exact request written in Python already. So much for AI, right? So how, where does this go from here? That request becomes, and I'm not sure how well you guys will be able to see this, this is pseudocode anyway, it becomes the basis of our Lambda. right? So if you look up there at the top, that's the API. In that particular case, this is hard-coded to the Regal Showtime, which is that AAA XR code up there. You'll notice we're popping in today's date so that we get, up-to-date relevant times. And then this is some pseudocode here really to just show how we are, what are we doing with this data when we get back, right? So this API call is going to return every movie and every showtime for a given theater for a given date, which is awesome. But you're sitting there going, well, how are we going to match that to the title, the input that somebody gave us, right? And this is where things get kind of funky and goofy. And we've done some really basic fuzzy matching and stuff in here, so that, and you'll hear it later, like Mission Impossible, the full title is, Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, 2025, blah, blah, blah. No one's going to say that into the thing. So we need to be able to match Mission Impossible's Mission Impossible. This is where we could probably, clean this thing up a little bit in the future if we take this further. But for now, we're doing a pretty basic job of it. So that is what the Lambda is doing, right? The Lambda is getting this movie, it's getting this theater, and it's going and looking up those movie times, and it's filtering and saying, okay, for that movie, if we can match to that movie, we're going to return, all the show times and some, the name and some other information about it. But how does it get back to Lex? How does that get back into Amazon Connect? Lex for Amazon Connect has its own sort of goofy language markdown that I'm not sure if it exists anywhere outside of Lex, but you can see it's this goofy like speak tag. And then you say, we're just writing out, the movie name is playing at this theater at, these times. And then if you pass it back to, if the Lambda function returns something that looks like this, then that's all Connect and Lex needs to speak the title back to you. And that's it, right? One more thing, one more piece of information we were looking for. If you remember number 6, where do we get, the prompts for Kramer? I will tell you that that's where we got the prompts for Kramer, and we don't really have to talk too much more about it, but we'll go on from there. So this is our final flow, and you're going to see it's pretty basic, and it's going to look a lot like that first one. You'll notice a few things here, like success and error go to the same thing, right? Because if you remember, Kramer's ignoring all of that input because he doesn't understand it in the first place. So the flow looks a lot like, what that conversation between him and George looks like. And that's it. This is actually a really simple one. The LexBot stuff gets really interesting because it lets you, turn it into more of a conversational thing. Lex is good and bad, right? It's got some good things, it's got some bad things. But anyway, at this point, let's see it in action. And I'm not doing it live from my phone because I'm a coward, but I did record this, and this is real, and this is live.
Hello, and welcome to Moviephone. If you know the name of the movie you'd like to see, press 1. Using your touchtone keypad, please enter the first 3 letters of the movie title now. You've selected Agent Zero. If that's correct, press 1. You've selected Brown-Eyed Girl. If this is correct, press 1. Why don't you just tell me the name of the movie you selected?
Mission Impossible.
To find the theater nearest you, please enter your 5-digit zip code now. Why don't you just tell me where you want to see the movie?
Regal Webster.
Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, 2025, is playing at Regal Webster Place at 3:10 p.m. and 7:10 p.m. Is there anything else I can help with?
No.
Goodbye.
All right, and there we have it. It works, it's real. So, where is there room for improvement in this flow, right? We sacrificed a little bit of functionality in order to just make it funny. Like, I think ideally, if you were trying to do this for real, you probably wouldn't bother making the user sit through like 3 or 4 prompts of Kramer and ignore everything that they say. You probably just jump right into the bot. And I also suspect, based on the stuff that Joe's going to talk about later, that the intent stuff has come a little bit further, and we could probably just have somebody go, hey, I want to see this movie at this time, or this movie at this theater, and it could go look all that up. Other functionality that's not in there, we're only looking at today. And then actually pretty conveniently, it actually only looks up times after you've called, just because that's already built into the Fandango API. Those guys are pretty good at it. But then, we're not handling any edge cases either, right? There's no error handling in this flow, right? So if your movie's not playing, or if your movie's sold out, which is information you can find out, we're not going to find that out. And I think those things would be interesting. The other thing too that I think, if I had more time, if I could figure out how to do it, I would have done a deep fake of Kramer. But then I thought about it, and it was like a deep fake of Kramer doing an impersonation of the Moviephone guy, and I don't know how much stuff there is out there for that. But I think you guys can kind of tell it is a little incongruous to go from Kramer talking to then the robot talking. But yep, that's your talk for today. Huge thank you to Henry Gantner, who's over there. He did 99% of the work on this project. Cosmo Kramer and Margaret and the rest of the organizers for putting this out there. And then I have to say it, but we have no rights to any of the intellectual property or the APIs or anything that we use for this project. So, enjoy.